Hello, today we're speaking with Adam Leah, and Adam is a creative director of Nxtedition. Hello, Adam.
Hello, Vera. How are you doing?
Oh, great. Could you please tell me a little bit more about the company? What does the company do? And you have an incredible website, which I like very much. And could you please tell what Nxtedition does?
So basically, we're formed from what was an SI about 9 years ago. And we did a standard installation, and we got very frustrated with the way that things are sort of held together with fairy dust and string. So we decided to first build our own automation system using JavaScript, actually, which was quite unheard of 9 years ago. And then we kind of grew from that, and another customer asked us to build a MAM. So we kind of built a MAM that was attached to the automation, and then we built a script system, and then we built our own ingest machine. And then from there, this monster has grown. So basically what we do at Nxtedition is we consolidate all the complex headaches that everyone has into a single user interface. And then we centralize the content and we make it available to everyone who has permission to see it so that they can collaborate on it. So we're talking everything from the planning of the story to the scripting of the story, the NRCS part of the story, the media asset management, the ingest, the artificial intelligence, the streaming in and out, the automation of the studio gallery, the equipment in the studio gallery, and publishing to social media, publishing live, streaming live, whatever you need. So a very large chunk of the workflow actually is what we've done to simplify the process.
Yeah, and so your product is, let's say, streaming platforms or TV platforms or TV ecosystems?
Yes, we can publish pretty much to things like TikTok and to Facebook and to YouTube. I have to remember them all. And we can stream live to YouTube and to Facebook, but also, we can get an HD SDI output and send that to a bird and put that into a satellite dish someone's house as well. So, we take care of quite a lot of that workflow.
And for example, if I'm a telco or ISP or an owner of TV platform, what kind of services can I buy from your company?
Okay, hang on a second. I might have to stop. Is that all right if we stop a second?
Yes, of course. So, what kind of services do you offer to pay TV operators, ISPs, or TV platform owners?
So I think the kind of service that we offer is where people say, an end-to-end solution, they usually mean like the content and then it gets delivered to the CDNs and all of that stuff like that. Okay. Where we start is actually at that point. So where we end, I should say, is at that point. So we can build content that can then be distributed to fast platforms, to OTT platforms, or even live platforms. But we can actually facilitate the planning and the production of that part.
And how do you build content? Could you please tell me more about that?
Like so content can come from
customer.
Say again?
Or a customer journey of your client, of one of your clients.
Yeah, so what would typically happen is that we would either have a newsroom client, for instance, where they have journalists on the ground and they're gathering content as they're there in the field, and they can either upload that directly into Next from the field over like 4G or 5G connections, and we get the raw material into Next. Then the journalists can actually then leap on that content and start doing stuff with it. So they can start writing a script for the news broadcast, say at 6, or they could start writing a script for a pre-recorded piece that they're going to do, and start throwing in the rushes of the B-roll and everything in there. They can build up the graphics because we also support HTML graphics, so we can make all the graphics inside the system, and then they can go into a studio and just record the content immediately like that, really fast. We even have our own built-in prompter, believe it or not. So they can just put the script straight on the prompter, go in, do the piece, and then it gets sliced off the ingest and then published. There's no one faster than Nxtedition at actually getting content in, turning content around and pushing it out again. So as a live tool, it's phenomenal, but also, when you're building things which involves creating small packages for fast TVs, for instance, or for OTT platforms where they just want to put up small clips, we can also facilitate that because it's just a publish of the clip when it's finished. But they do that production process inside Nxtedition in one user interface, which cuts out an awful lot of steps. I mean, if you imagine you had to download the clip and then you have to put it into Premiere and then you have to edit it and then you have to render it out and put it on a stick and move it over there and then you have to open up Facebook and then you have to post it to Facebook, you know, all those steps are smoothed out. So it's all taken care of within inside the one UI.
And who is your typical client?
So we have quite a mix, actually. We have in Greenland, for instance, the national broadcaster in Greenland, KNR, we actually play out both of their terrestrial TV channels, KNR 1 and 2. We do all of their TV broadcast news, their radio news. We do 3 radio stations also out of Next. Plus we run the website and the social media. Also there's a little sign in Nook above the shopping center that we also send data to. So they have a ticker above the shopping center on a LED screen, which we actually automate. So that's a pretty interesting broad scope of a client. We look after a lot of what they do. And then we've got a couple of entertainment shows in Denmark. 2 of the biggest entertainment shows in the afternoon and the morning are also run by Next. That's because of the flexibility of being able to change things on the video walls and have guests come in and people arrive late and it's easy to swap them out in the rundown, stuff like that. So again, the flexibility of live is really, really powerful in Next. And then we have some local news stations that also run Next, and actually a couple of newspapers. So we have Expressen in Stockholm and a company called Blick TV in Switzerland. What's interesting about Blick TV is that they actually do object-based broadcasting, where they record at the same time as we record the clean feed. We are also recording the metadata coming from the subtitle system. So they have a respeaker with subtitles. And we ingest the subtitles, and at the same time we ingest the graphics and send them as actually a feed to the device, and then they're rendered on the device. So the clean feed and the graphics and subtitles are actually rendered on the device. So when you turn the phone, it doesn't actually stop the stream, which is really quite interesting. That's actually the future of things, I think, object-based broadcasting, localization, personalization.
Yeah, I know that you recently visited IBC, and what major trends did you notice?
I personally noticed some interesting stuff on the stand. So one of the strange things that I noticed that I wasn't expecting was people talking to me about rear view mirror costs in the cloud. That they were trying stuff out in the cloud and they got these big invoices that they weren't expecting. Yeah. And I guess what I can surmise from that, at least, is that the trend of the move towards cloud, I think people are now trying it out. And obviously, as you start to try things out, you start to find things out. Now, the question is, what's going to happen there with that? Because the cloud is all about right sizing it. Okay, so you need to make sure that you're not using too many instances at any one time, or you're not expanding out into thousands of gigabytes of storage space. So how do you resolve that? I mean, a lot of people can resolve that using a managed service, which is fine because then you know where you stand in a managed service, for instance. But what actually happens as we move forwards now with current global situation with things, I think they call it cloudflation, where obviously the staff costs of these big data centers are going to go up, and that cost, I guess, will get passed to the consumer in the end. And as a result of that, is it possible to understand in 12 months' time how much that service in public cloud will cost? Will it become too much in actual fact? Will we start to see much more of a broad swathe to hybrid solutions, or even going back to sort of on-prem solutions? That's a very interesting thing that I wasn't expecting to have conversations about, but I had a lot of conversations about that. So that was quite eye-opening.
Yeah. So what is the best solution for the cloud? To go into the cloud, not to go into the cloud, or go there partly?
It's it's an open-ended question. I mean, how long is a piece of string? I think they say in England. I mean, hybrid is probably the best solution because then you have the ability to be scalable and elastic at both ends. So if the cloud turns out actually to be cheaper, for instance, for storage, maybe you can scale out in the cloud, but if it's more expensive for compute, then maybe you can use more COT servers on the ground to do the compute task. So I think as we navigate our way through this, we're probably going to look at that sort of hybrid balance and trying to find out where the sweet spot is there.
Which functions does it make sense to put into the cloud, but which functions should you keep better in your office on your hardware?
Ooh, that's a good question. I think what the cloud's good at is scalability and elasticity. So you're able to scale up quickly, or if you have a lot of pressure on a service, it can be elastic with the service and you can spread it out. It's really good for that. The downside of the cloud is, because there's ups and downsides to everything, of course. The downside is the cost. I mean, some of these things, if you leave them running, can run up a very high cost, and you could buy, 2 servers for the price of 1 year of that particular service. So, that's a difficult balance. I think you can do a little what we do at Next, which is this concept of cloud bursting. So if we run out of resource on our COT servers on the ground, then we can just explode into the cloud and start using, transcode instances, or we can use, extra storage instances. If there's a big breaking news story that suddenly we need all that extra resource, well, we can spin the microservices up there and use that. That's actually quite an interesting way of doing it, because then, of course, there's a lot of resource available to you at the time you need it the most, and then when you don't need it, you spin it down and take it away. I think that's the beauty of the cloud: the scalability, the elasticity, and the ability to take things away when you're not using them. I think we start to get into, obviously, the on-prem thing versus the cloud thing is interesting, because it's a little bit like locking the interest rate on your mortgage in a way, really. If you go and invest in COTS hardware and stick it in a server room in your building or in a data center near to you, you've kind of locked in what the infrastructure cost will be. Whereas in 24 months, if you're in the cloud, you haven't locked into that infrastructure cost, so you don't know what it is. So it's kind of an interesting balance there as well. How much of this stuff should we actually provision on-prem or in a data center of our own, where we have control of what the cost of that thing is over a period of 5 years, for instance, as opposed to, we don't know what that cost would be if we look at cloudflation coming into the game.
And I know that you had incredible experience on IBC. Could you please tell me more? What kind of experience did you have?
The best part for me was the accelerator. So actually, it was before the show. In fact, for nearly 5 months, we were having a meeting with some amazing professionals every week for an hour, and it was the one we were involved in was the news studio of the future and what should that look like. And it was just fascinating. It was fascinating. One of the things that came up was quite early on is that we had a lovely young lady, Crystal, from CNN Discovery, Warner Brothers. I've probably got that the wrong way around, Warner Brothers Discovery, who because she was young, obviously she made us all change our direction very fast about what we should be doing. Should we really be, building a studio? Should the studio be more in the field now? So for instance, we're seeing a lot of stuff in Ukraine, for instance, where they're broadcasting directly from Ukraine. So the studio is actually, where the story is. That in itself is an interesting concept when you come into things like Starlink and 5G and some of the other actual accelerator programs that were going on around us, to see how easy it was actually to get that signal from that place at low latency to where you're actually producing the program. So that was a bit of an eye-opener. But the biggest fundamental eye-opener was this concept of the interface to the story. And I think actually I probably got the slide here. If I just do this, hopefully it'll pop up. Let me get rid of this. Okay, so this slide says it all really. The interface to the story is inconsistent. So what you're seeing here is the story on exactly the same story, but on all these different platforms. So it's different on TikTok as it is to Facebook, as it is to Twitter, as it is to YouTube. YouTube is stuck there in the top in 16:9, whereas here is in Instagram, it's like not even square now. It's kind of a really weird hybrid between square and vertical. And then you've got things like Blick and The Guardian who are doing that more newspaper approach with it at the top. Nothing's wrong here. Nothing's, this is fine, but it's just that as broadcasters, we think this part of the equation is solved, and it's not. It's actually very, very inconsistent. So it's up to us to deal with that.
Yes, and what is
so a lot of what we did in that.
What is the
well, what it means is that we need to version stories. So we need to take a story into the system and not say, okay, one story, dump it to all possible platforms. We need to be able to version it. So we need to be able to do the short version, and that's for the millennials because they just don't have time to hang around. We need to do the long form versions for the baby boomers, the Gen Z wants something different to Gen X. So we have to be able to version the stories. And part of what we did in the accelerator was to talk about this kind of modular journalism, where we can split a story into its component parts. What's the history? What's the context? What's happening now? What's the comment on it? What's the background to the story? What's the title of the story? What's the summary of the story? What's the long form of the story? And then with machine learning, we can actually learn what people's preferences are and then start pulling together a story, be it in text, be it in images, or be it in video. It doesn't really matter. We can pull together a story with machine learning that actually delivers the consumer exactly how they want to receive the news in the way that they want to receive it. So going through that process and theoretically building it has actually now led us as a company to start actively developing it, because it was so well received that I think is something that we need to actually look at. So it's not about it's not about being clever with AI and how can I, scan an archive. It's actually, let's make some pragmatic tools for journalists that they can actually use to reach these different platforms and hit that story in the sweet spot and actually get it formatted correctly, for instance, for the devices. One of the things that really interests me is that you have to build a new safe area that takes into account all the logos on TikTok and the position of the rounded corners on Twitter and stuff like that, so that when you're actually building the content, you're actually making sure it's not landing underneath logos and things like that. So it's quite a fascinating thing to get involved with, to be honest.
And how do you think, in which proportion should it be? For example, which proportion should take artificial intelligence, and which part should journalists take? Or first journalists
again
more, and then in the future artificial intelligence does it more.
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question, and it's TBD, to be decided. So there are tools available to us right now where we can generate a story from a sentence, but if you do that, do you?
Yeah.
Sorry. Which tool? There's a tool called copy.ai. That's one. There's one that our devs have found that I don't know off the top of my head. I'll have to find out and see if I can send you a link. But there's quite a few if you actually Google for them. These things where you can just type in a few lines of text, and what it will do is it will basically use machine learning, go through the whole basically internet about things like that, and it will write a story based on what it knows. And it's good. I've fooled a couple of people with it. It's actually good. And that's an interesting concept, but my personal preference would be to have the journalists manage it and to have a story. This comes back to being story centric, that the idea that a story comes into a newsroom and then is just published and forgotten about is not true. A story evolves over time, it ages, and more things happen around it, or more things are relevant to it. And to keep these stories alive in story-centric manner like we do. So for instance, you contain a story in a story container, and it stays in the system forever. And then we can see all the media and all the scripts that have been written about it, all the social posts about it. We can even harvest, tweets about that particular subject. And it's all kept together in one story container in one place. And as a result of that, I think a journalist would be able to build out the history of the story and the context of the story. And again, in the accelerator, we tried to work out, could we put versions of the story in a single script? So if you had a 180-second script, could you build into it the 10-second version, the 15-second version, the 20-second version, in paragraphs, so that we could slice bits along the way with a marker, and then you could just publish the bits as relevant to the person on the other end who's requested a specific kind of story to be glued together, if you know what I mean. So I think there's room for both. There's a little room for both.
Yes, but the problem is that there are topics on which you have very polar opinions. Let's say in the United States, there are two parties, and one tell one story and another one can tell opposite story. So which version to choose?
Yep. And some of these AI tools allow you to create a positive version, a negative version, a professional version. You can, the natural language processing can actually do things around that. The issue with that is, who's driving that? Who's telling it what to do about that? Of course. And I still think there's a very, very important role for journalists in every newsroom. I don't think that's ever going to go away. I just think, as I said earlier, it's about giving journalists some pragmatic tools, either a head start or even just be able to give them the research tools around them so that they can actually say, okay, here's one view, here's another view, what's my view, and what's my news editor's view, and what's our publication or our newsroom's view on this particular subject. So, you know, it's very, very hard to say that AI could run around and write all the stories. There is something that actually was quite interesting as well. We're in the accelerator with Reuters. And Reuters do these, when they send a clip, they also have a small story script that their journalists actually write with it. And we actually started looking at whether we could pull the Reuters clip, grab the metadata of the speech text, send it and turn it from text to speech, and then glue it back onto the video as a voiceover. And that works really, really well. It's surprising. So almost instantly you have a voice to video that you can actually publish to YouTube, but it's been written by a Reuters journalist. Obviously, you know, we made it editable. So if a journalist of a particular organization, I've talked to a few newsrooms where they say, oh no, we can't just repost what Reuters have written. But, you know, you're able to edit that and turn that into what it is before you send it for the text to speech conversion. But that saves finding a voiceover booth. It saves finding, you know, a quiet place that a journalist can plug it in, or even if the journalist isn't confident enough to do a voiceover, for instance. It's again, pragmatic way of getting things done fast and then out the door.
So you are creative director in a company which makes video stories, so to say, right? And what is the most creative?
Well, we build.
What is the most?
Sorry, can you ask a question again?
Yes, of course. So what is the most creative part of your job?
Of my job? Yeah. The most creative part of my job is a little two-sided. It's first of all persuading people that this is the way to go, because a lot of people are very married to the past, particularly in broadcast. So things move so slowly in this business that when you come up, it's a little like I often describe it like a train. It's a owner of a train company, and he says, you know, oh yeah, I want to get from Paris to Lisbon, and it takes 3 days on my train. I want to do it faster with more passengers. And he said, here's a jet plane, and they go, ah, that's fantastic. Where do I put the sleeper car? You know, because people want to use things like MOS, and they're not getting the actual ability of what this software is capable of doing. They're not releasing its full capabilities if we keep going back to trying to use what we've used in the past. So that's a lot of my job, is to try to show people and explain to people how, if you're fast, you're always first. So you're always the first notification on the phone. So if another newsroom is 2 minutes behind because they're using some protocol or something from somewhere else, they've been using a long time, if they're 2 minutes behind, then their notification is 2 minutes behind my newsroom's notification, and no one ever reads the second notification. And the other side of my job from a deployment standpoint is a bit of change management, which is again, it's this concern about change, and that what happens to you when you change, and how will the whole organization change to adopt such a wide-ranging change like this. But once they do, everybody's smiling. You know, we actually invite people to please go visit any of our clients. You'll see everybody's very, very, very happy with the system in comparison to what they had before, because everything just works. That's the main point. It's so consolidated and centralized.
So maybe you can tell a bright use case about one of your clients. For example, when a client came to you, he had some challenges, and now with your help, he solved these challenges.
I don't know how I can go without compromising anything. We've had a client that replaced a system that they were having to get up in the middle of the night and reset machines because they didn't work, and they had a lot of problems with getting anything to work at all. And then when we installed the system, the first thing came out of them, this just works. You know, it's like a breath of fresh air. So in other cases, we've done things where we've, for instance, TV2 Nord, when they finished their nightly news show, we developed a thing called salami slicing, where as they step through the automation from one script into the next script, so from story 1 into story 2, story 1 is automatically clipped off the ingest and sent to their website as a complete clip. So they step through story 2, 3, 4, 5, and by the time they finish the news show, the whole of the news show individual clips is already on the player on the website without any human intervention whatsoever. It's just totally automatic. And because by default they've put it out on the newscast, then it's clearly been authorized to go out. So there's no problems with the authorization process. But that's been quite a revelation to see that in action and working. That's been working for nearly 3 years now. It's a really cool feature. And again, it's because Next is so tightly integrated, between the script system, the automation system, and the ingest system that allows us to do that kind of thing.
And what is most challenging in your everyday activities?
Most challenging is probably the change thing, as I mentioned earlier. A lot of people want to integrate something they've already got or something they really like. And when you do that, integrations effectively are problematic on the premise of glue. So, you have to have lots of pieces of glue to hold all these different pieces of equipment together, which is normally moss. But for every piece of equipment, every integration has an in and an out. So exponentially, you increase the integrations by 2 every single one that you do. And that creates a lot of fragility in the system, and it creates a complete blame game between, it's their fault, no, it's their fault. And it's very difficult to resolve any of the problems that you have in a network like that. And that's what Next kind of eliminates, because we've taken care of that glue ourselves, and we're responsible for that glue. So we support that glue, and that glue is very efficient.
And let's say if I'm a potential client and I'm choosing a company for myself, who can help me with video, make it faster, etc. Based on which criteria can I choose such a company if I'm not a professional in this?
I'm not sure of the context of the question, but yeah.
So for example,
Next is quite a big system.
Yeah, between you and your competitors, based on which criteria can I make my choice?
Again, I'm not really sure on which criteria can you make your shows.
So you have clients, right? And let's assume I'm a potential client of your company, but apparently I'm choosing between several companies, because on the market there are always several companies. And how can I make my choice? Based on which criteria?
So the criteria that you could make that choice on is relatively straightforward. Speed, security, price, and agility.
Okay.
So speed is important because in a breaking news environment, speed is important, but it's also important in sport, right? Because you want to get the results out first. It's also important in entertainment. I can give you a good example. If you've got a dance show and they've just come off the dance floor and they're being judged, our salami slicing system could slice the dance, publish it to YouTube or Facebook, and the fans could be watching the dance while they're seeing the judging happening on TV. That's speed, and that speed comes from an inherently a set of tools like Next is, which is this kind of, big box of production tools that you can make work. I think when it comes to price, of course, the more systems that you have to buy and glue together is going to cost money, because you have more software license agreements, you have more service and support agreements. You also have to have the glue. And do you make the glue yourself, or do you pay somebody to make the glue for you? So, if you already buy all of that straight there in the system, like it is in Nxtedition, then there's a price advantage there. I can't remember what the other things I said. Agility, the agility part is, again, if you have lots of different systems, if you get a software update for one of them, you only change a small part of the workflow. Whereas in a system like ours, you can actually rebuild your workflow completely if you want to overnight. So like most of our customers start with a workflow that we work with them on, but after a year or 2 years, they've changed it 2 or 3 times because they're fine-tuning it to be exactly what they want, and they get what they want across the board. They don't just get it on like the NRCS or the MAM. They actually get it across the board. Everything's completely and utterly integrated. So it gives you a lot more agility.
And what about the future trends? For example, if we talk about next 10, 20 years, in which world we will live, and what trends are you detecting now about the future?
10, 20 years is a long time. Yeah, I think we're probably going to, by then, we'll have solved latency. I think in the cloud, we're already pretty close, to be honest. I think a lot more of the cloud stuff will be affordable, and there'll be a lot more of it, and a lot more players in that market, I suspect. We're already starting to see some other people coming in now. So there'll be a bit of a price war around that. That could be advantageous, of course, because, you know, fundamentally, as we move into a more digital age, it makes much more sense to be in the cloud where we can deliver to CDNs really fast. So I think production in the cloud is almost a given, particularly in 10 years. We're not quite there yet, but I think that's what we're going to see. I think we're also going to see a lot more movement towards, as I said before, you know, the interface to the story. So we need to be sending the graphics to the device and let the device render the graphics. They shouldn't be burnt in. It should be all metadata. So we're going to be seeing a lot of metadata moving around, as well as video streams moving around, I think. And that will allow two-way communications between the viewers and the broadcaster, which opens up a new sphere of live now, because now they can answer questions, or they can, you know, they can vote in things or whatever. And that creates an amazing two-way conversation that the graphics could be powered by using different JavaScript calls, because a lot of this will end up being, you know, web technologies. There's no doubt about that. I think even browsers will probably replace apps. We won't have apps in 10 years. There's just going to be the technology in the browsers will be able to do everything an app can do. And then we're down to, you know, how good is your development team, which fortunately for us, one of the best in the world.
Is there something important that we didn't discuss, but which should be mentioned? Maybe we forgot to discuss something. Yeah, something important.
I don't think so. It's been quite a broad discussion. I can kind of show you how easy it is to do things in Next.
Yes.
So this touch screen.
Yes.
Yeah. So this touch screen here, I'm like a magician. I've got nothing up my sleeves, honest. So on my desk, I have no proprietary hardware at all. I don't have a vision mixer or an audio mixer or anything. I just have a touch screen. And with the touch screen, what I can do is I can push. This is the mixer bus here. So if this is camera 1, this is camera 2. So you're now looking at a studio 40 kilometers away from me in Malmo. So I'm at home in my basement, and I'm controlling a studio, extremely low latency from here. So for instance, I can change the video wall to be an aquarium like this, or I can actually bring up like an SSRC here. So we've got like different DVEs, and I can switch what's in the DVE boxes. So for instance, I can put you in a DVE box there, and then I can put me in a DVE box here, and then we can have a little bit of maybe some a mouse can come out, and maybe some confetti. There we go. So you can see I'm controlling vision mixers, audio mixers, but also playout machines, and we're doing everything here over public internet. And then the private cloud servers are back at base, and that's allowing me to drive all of this in the way that you see.
It looks great. And what does it cost per month?
It is great.
Yes. What does it cost for your?
It's not a it's not a per month kind of deal. So we have like a license fee per concurrent users across a year, and there's, if they want to be on-prem, we can deal with the servers for that as well. So we can actually have a product called Nxtcloud, but the Nxtcloud solution, you know, you can't drive a gallery like this because you need to have some equipment in the gallery for doing the HDSDI feeds and things like that. So you have to have something on the ground if you want to drive a studio, for instance.
Are you developing any new technologies which you launch in the following years, upcoming years, something new?
Yeah, the thing that we've just done, that we've just launched, is this virtual assets thing. And what virtual assets actually allows me to do is to be able to see things outside of the system. Sorry, I'm just looking at that. So we can see things like email. We can see things like YouTube. You can see things like Pexels, for instance, which is a open source stock library. But you see them directly inside the user interface. So we don't download anything into the system. You just browse it, but you do it from inside Next, which allows you to research stories. It allows you to get press release emails and put them into the workflow so that you can, everyone can see what's been arriving from press release land. And also things like Reuters, so like newswire companies, we can actually go straight in. For instance, with Reuters, we can see the whole of the Reuters Connect through the Reuters API, and you can search Reuters directly inside Next. And then if you find something that you want to use, we can click the harvest and you can harvest it into Next, and then you can publish it straight away. So you're able to get at those clips. And again, the idea there is speed, because obviously if you had to open Reuters Connect, find the clip, download the clip, put it on your computer, you know, put it into whatever edit system, you know, the time here is clicking. Whereas in Next, what you do is you just find the clip using Next to find it within Reuters, and then you pull it down and you push it out. So that's been quite a revelation. That it's really cool feature, virtual assets.
Thank you so much, Adam. It was incredibly interesting, and I think that in the upcoming years you can tell more and show much more interesting features. Thank you so much.
Yeah, it's very exciting times, actually.
Yeah. Okay, have a nice day.
Thank you.